Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'll introduce the topic of supply. In economics, the term supply has a specific meaning and does not differentiate between the supply of physical goods, like computers, or services, like legal advice. In economics, if something is supplied, then the firm supplying the good is able to produce it, will make some profit from doing so, and actually intends on producing and selling the good. In economics, we often use the term sell, supply, or produce interchangeably. This is because a firm would not produce something if it wasn't intending on selling it. So the actual quantity of goods or services supplied by a firm is the amount that it plans to produce of that particular good or service for a specific price. As in the case of demand, there is a law which describes how the theory of supply is embedded in our economies. The law of supply states that if everything remains unchanged, then the higher the relative market price of a good, the greater the quantity supplied of that good, or the lower the price of a good, the lower the quantity supplied of that good. Let's think for a moment if this makes sense. When we want to buy something, we want the best deal possible and we want it to be affordable in terms of our budgets. So the lower the price of a good, the more we are able to purchase of it. But if we were running a business and selling goods, then we are trying to make a profit, and so we'll want to sell our goods or services at the highest price possible. So the higher the price that consumers are willing to pay, the higher the amount of goods firms will want to supply, because then they will make a higher profit. So the law of supply is almost the opposite of the law of demand. So according to the law of supply, supply is a relationship between two variables. One, the price of a particular good or service, and two, the quantity supplied of that good or service. A supply curve is used to graphically illustrate the law of supply. So let's now draw a supply curve to see what we can learn from it. In order for us to draw a supply curve, we need enough information regarding the various quantities supplied at different market price levels. Normally, you'll be given a supply schedule, which is simply a table that includes some price and quantity supplied combinations. Table A is such a schedule, and from the information in it, we can plot enough points on a set of axes to draw our first supply curve. In some cases, you might be given a supply formula from which you can calculate any combination by inputting various supply or price values. But in this video, we will simply use the supply schedule provided in Table A. Let's now identify and draw our two axes. In the study of economics, the vertical or y-axis is almost always the relative price level. Remember, the price level is the most important factor determining how much is supplied by firms, hence why it is stated in the law of supply. This is why we use it in the supply graph to graphically illustrate the law of supply. The horizontal or x-axis is therefore the quantity supplied. In Figure A, the quantity is defined as the amount of coal supplied per day in kilograms by firm XYZ. We always need to ensure that a time frame as well as clearly defined quantities are provided. We cannot just say 30 coal. We need to specify the time and metric used. Now that we have our axes set up, we can start plotting the price and quantity combinations we know from Table A above. These are points A to E in the table. So to plot the first point A, we need to connect the 270 kilograms of coal per day value with the $25 kilogram price level. So now we have point A represented on our supply graph. We then need to plot point B and so on until we have all the points from the schedule represented on the axes. So all we're simply doing is just plotting the points from Table A onto the axes in Figure A. Once we have plotted all the points, you should see a pattern emerge. If there is no pattern, then you're likely doing something wrong. We can now connect the dots and draw the supply curve. We connect the dots to draw a solid supply curve because there are many more possible combinations than those illustrated in Table A. What you should also know is that the supply curve will never go through the origin, or the point where price and quantity supplied are both zero. The reason is that at a very low price, but still greater than zero, all profits will be eroded, and therefore a combination very close or at the origin is unrealistic. What you should find is an upward sloping supply curve, which is curved outwards, as shown in the supply curve S in Figure A. Our supply curve now illustrates the law of supply and shows all the quantities of coal firm XYZ is willing and able to supply at different market prices. Some textbooks use a straight line supply curve, which is useful for demonstrating some more complex topics, but the curve must never be downward sloping. So why does the supply curve have an increasing slope? The law of diminishing marginal returns explains what happens to the output of products when a firm uses more variable inputs while keeping at least one factor of production fixed. Real capital, such as buildings, machinery, and equipment, is usually the factor kept fixed when demonstrating this principle. If you are not familiar with the concept of diminishing marginal returns, then please read through your textbook to get a better understanding, or watch one of my previous videos where I explain the concept in more detail. In short, firms need to increase the amount of labor they use to increase their output in the short run. But at some point, the extra amount of output produced from hiring more and more labor starts to diminish, which means it becomes less and less profitable to employ this additional labor. This is because firms need more revenue from each additional unit of output when the costs of producing those additional units is increasing at an increasing rate. So when market prices increase, so will the amount that the firm supplies, but it will be at a slower rate than the rate at which prices are increasing. Up to now, we have been using the supply curve of a single firm called firm XYZ. What is often more useful is to illustrate the entire market supply curve. To do this, we need to add up all the individual firm supply curves to calculate the total market supply for coal. Figure A and Figure B represent the supply curves of only two firms supplying coal in a given market, Firm 1 and Firm 2. Each firm supplies a different amount of coal at similar market price levels. For example, at $5 per kilogram, Firm 1 supplies 5 kilograms per day, while Firm 3 supplies 15 kilograms per day. Because the y-axis in both graphs represents the market price, there is no need to do anything to this axis as it already represents the market. What we need to do is find out how much coal is supplied in the market as a whole for each of these price levels. The way to do this is simply add up all the coal from each individual firm to get to the total market supply. For the $5 price level, we already know each firm's quantity supplied, so let's start there. First, we need our market supply curve axes. The y-axis will be the same as the other graphs because this is the market price level. For the x-axis, we need to make sure we have large enough values because we'll be adding up all the individual firm values. Let's now take the price level of $5 per kilogram. We know Firm 1 will supply 5 kilograms per day, and we know Firm 2 will supply 15 kilograms per day. So if we assume that these are the only two firms in the market, then if we add up the 5 and the 15 kilograms of coal per day, we get a market supply of 20 kilograms per day, which we plot on our market supply graph for the $5 price level. Let's now take the price level of 20 kilograms per day. We know Firm 1 will supply 25 kilograms per day, and we know Firm 2 will supply 35 kilograms per day at the $20 price level. If we add up the 25 and the 35 kilograms of coal, we get a market supply of 60 kilograms of coal per day. We can then plot this point on our supply curve, which we label BM. Because we are only summing up the supply values on the x-axis and not the prices on the y-axis, we say that we add up the values horizontally. If we do this for more market price levels, then we will eventually be able to draw the final market supply curve as shown in Figure C, labeled SM.